He said we need to flip some suburban votes and we need to really increase turnout in the urban core. The challenge with McDaniel, though, is he's not the kind of Republican that would turn off people unless you're just turned off by Republicans. And so he should be the favorite, but he's going to have they're going to make a run at him. Al mentioned the Pike County seat, Philip Wheeler. He won a special election earlier this year. It's his first re-elect. That's always a challenge. But Trump's pretty popular there.
But he's also been a little controversial. Is that going to be a help or a hurt in that area?
Who knows, who knows? And then the other one in Eastern Kentucky that we're all watching is Johnny Turner versus Johnny Turner. So I'll say it more slowly. Johnny Ray Turner.
Yes, please. I want you to clarify that.
So Johnny with a Y, Ray Turner, longtime state senator. Everybody likes Johnny Ray Turner. Former coach. He's been there about 20 years. He's from Johnson County, and it's kind of like everything north of Pike County, essentially up towards Ashland area, and a little bit of, and the Republicans nominated Johnny, i.e. L. Turner, who was a state rep briefly a few years ago. He won a primary yesterday. Republicans think you have a chance, not just because of the name confusion, but Turner's got some, has some name ID, brand ID, excuse me. And again, that's an area of the state. It's rural. It's starting to go more Republican. And Johnny Ray Turner, is probably going to have a tough race.
Yeah. Matt Jones said today poetically, to Ray or not to Ray.
Sounds like something he might say. I want to go back to that.
Renee,
go ahead, Al.
There was another interesting race over there in the East for justice of the Supreme Court.
Sure.
And an incumbent was defeated. Sam Wright lost to Robert Conley and Chris Harris, former state representative. Harris beat him by about 350 votes. Conley ran first with about 40% of the vote. It's kind of unusual to see that result. I didn't follow the campaign closely, but I understand it was fairly rough and tumble, and we may see likewise in the fall.
Well, Al, I couldn't think, when was the last time, do you remember an incumbent didn't make it out of a primary? I mean, it almost never happens.
For Supreme Court?
Yeah, for Supreme Court.
I cannot recall.
Yeah, and then also the mayor of Paducah had a similar thing happen. She finished third in a three-way primary and will also not advance.
Oh, wow. And her name escapes me, but I
Brady Harless.
That's right. Yeah. I think she was an emerged participant as well. Jennifer
young, charismatic. I don't really know that. My mom's from Paducah. I have to mention that. Hey, Mom. I don't know the dynamics of the race. I just remember seeing that as a headline. And then in the House, we're going to have a lot of interesting races in the fall because both parties have their eyes on some seats to flip. Some are open. We've had a number of retirements. And then we also had some retirements that just the majority party, like Booker's seat, no Republican filed. Some of the Southeast Kentucky seats, no Democrats filed that have been Republican for Tommy Turner and Jim Stewart, who were there forever. The winners of those primaries, and Jeff Hoover's
Josh
Branscombe. They're going to win in the fall without opposition.
We haven't talked about the Senate District 21 seat. This is Albert Robinson, a Republican incumbent who didn't make it out. Bob Babage.
Yes. Albert Robinson was first in the House in 1972.
I was born that year.
I was born that year too.
Hey, all right.
Which one? No, okay.
Well, I was an intern
I'm not going to ask you because I'm a gentleman. I'm not going to ask you.
Well, it's okay. October, it's okay.
I was an intern and remember Albert Robinson. He was a very colorful
You were his intern?
I was. Not his intern, but I was a
you were House's intern.
In the glory days of interns. So, a long career. And a lot of contribution to Kentucky. But got 35% in a three-way race, and it's another generation offering
leaders. Let's just call a spade, folks. I think all of us know that Albert Robinson has mainly served in the legislature in the service of Albert Robinson, just as much as his own constituents. And, this sort of self-dealing and favoritism just winds up catching up with you eventually. Albert had been there too long.
People may want to know specifically what do you mean there who are not familiar with Albert Robinson.
Well, he was the sponsor of one of the great pension bills, for example, and was famous for the wonderfully opaque language that disguised just what the benefits were going to be. And, he was kind of a rapscallion, but he was Laurel County's rapscallion. People liked old Albert, but, pretty soon your string just runs out.
And let's give a little credit.
It just finally ran out for Albert.
And Brandon Storm, who's the young attorney who beat him. Some will remember the last name. Donald Storm, who was the adjutant general under Governor Ernie Fletcher. I believe Brandon is General Storm's nephew. So you had a little bit of a brand name identity because in addition to his military background, the Storms have a family business down there. And Brandon went out and built a coalition in that district, which is Laurel's the heart of it, but it's a lot of counties to the east. And there was a three-way race, so there was a third candidate in the race, and it's always hard to beat an incumbent. And when you have a third person in there, they kind of say, okay, I don't like the incumbent. I'm not, I'm anti-Robinson, but I'm going to split my vote, right?
Right.
And Storm was able to pull it off. So, it'll be interesting to see where he goes.
Albert had opposition in previous races, and there was this sort of building dissatisfaction with him, I think. And finally caught up with him.
Storm is an impressive person. I got to meet him in London earlier this year at a civic event. He'll be, again, a new generation of leadership.
Robinson had been defeated by Tom Jensen. When Jensen came back to the legislature, they had a race, I believe, in 2004 maybe. And then when Jensen left to go become a judge, that's when Robinson came back to the Senate. But he's been, other than that, 8-year term, he's been a fixture in our whole lives.
Sure, yeah.
In Frankfort.
Literally.
And one time he was a doorkeeper.
Oh, wow.
Really? In the Senate? Oh, wow.
In the House.
In the House. Well, and they've got to be bicameral about these things, right? Let's talk about the Senate district.
He served in both chambers.
Yeah, that's right. He served in both chambers.
And as a House member as well as a doorkeeper.
Yeah. Senate District 7. This is an interesting race. This was a 5-way Republican primary, and a name that's probably very familiar to folks.
Yeah.
She won pretty handily. Adrienne Southworth, who worked for former Lieutenant Governor Janine Hampton, who was fired by former Governor Matt Bevin, and that made a lot of splash. So, Trey?
Yeah, that was one of Massie's endorsements. Dark forces did not prevent her from winning that primary. It was a multi-candidate.
You guys are on fire, I tell you.
We had a week to prepare.
That's right.
We're not tired from watching returns all day.
We've been taking drama classes. It's my intern, speaking of very
I always have to say that.
I know, every time, right?
But she
Well, what's my district?
Yeah, I'll your district. But I think the interesting thing also is you have a third candidate. It's not just a Republican and Democrat.
Right, that's right.
In that seat. Now, why don't you talk about it since it is your district?
Shortly before the primary, Kenny Carroll, the son of former Governor Julian Carroll, the incumbent in this district, announced that he was going to run as an independent. And Julian Carroll said, well, I've already promised I'd endorse Joe Gravis, the state representative who's trying to move up. And Kenny said, well, I understand that, Dad. So we're going to have a 3-way race in the fall. And a 3-way race gives the Republicans a chance to pick up that seat. Southworth had the best advertising. She really stood out among the other candidates. U.S. term limits played a role in this race. They went after Linda Thompson, who, by the way, is Bob Gable's girlfriend, and kept her from getting more than 16.4% of the vote. And so now we have a 3-way race between Gravis and Kenny Carroll and Adrienne Southworth in the general election. One other race in that area that turned out to be a surprise, in the state representatives race in the 56th district, Bob Gibson of Versailles was the expected winner because Woodford County dominates that district, but the winner turned out to be Lamar Allen, African-American from Franklin County, and you have to wonder if the turnout for Charles Booker, who ran very well in Franklin County, didn't help nominate Lamar Allen.
Yeah.
And that's one of those races where the winner, that particular House race, was likely to not be as competitive in the fall, and so we'll likely see Allen in the legislature.
That's a big strong outside.
Well, I don't know about that because Dan Pfister has run twice before.
Yeah.
And he's been a pretty good candidate. So I think that race will be competitive.
So I'm not going to hear from him about my comments. Sorry.
That Senate race runs, Lawrenceburg.
Just send him a contribution.
Yeah.
Lawrenceburg, Versailles, Frankfort, Owington, and Gallatin County as well.
Yeah, the districts down there are a little bit different. Yeah, and so I think it's going to be fascinating to see because there's going to be a lot of the control of the House is not going to be at stake in this election, but on the margins, and then also how this sets up for redistricting. Because depending upon who wins and loses and which districts flip, that may make the lines which the Republicans will draw. But it's a bill, so the governor will have a chance to veto it. I think, right, Bob? It's a bill, so the governor would have the ability to veto. In theory,
yeah, and they have the opportunity to override it.
And they can override it. Yeah, so Republicans will write the lines, both chambers, for the first time ever. And so how these, the Eastern Kentucky seats, for example, with the loss in population in Eastern Kentucky, there's going to have to be some new districts drawn there.
With this race we're describing and the open seats that are being left by Democrats and several seats that Republicans have to defend, especially since the members there are newer, we're going to have a heck of a fall for Senate and House races in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Do you think Democrats pick up anything, anywhere? I mean, other than maybe the...
Yeah, there are a couple of seats where I think they've got some real shots. The Stanley's seat where the Josh Hicks.
That's Lexington,
It's a Lexington area seat. It's a suburban area. Josh Hicks came with less than 100 votes, I believe, in last time in that seat. So that's one where the Democratic nominee who won the, Mitchell, I believe is her name, won the primary, was endorsed by the state chamber. So I think that's one where there's a possibility. 2 years ago, they came after Jason Nemus in the Louisville suburbs. It was a pretty close race. Bob mentioned the Ernie Harris race being close. Julie Adams' race was close, and so Republicans struggled in some of those races. Phil Moffitt went down.
Right.
I was told they're going to go after Nemus next time. But Republicans have targets. Henderson, Rob Wiederstein, the first term member, retired judge, from Henderson will be a target. And then there's some other open seats as well. There's probably on the net, there's probably more Republican targets of opportunity than there are Democrats. But
I agree. Yeah.
Al?
Much so.
Yeah, the only real question is whether or not you wind up with a veto-proof majority in the House, 60.
And where it might matter is with a budget in this coming session, we're going to require a supermajority because it's a revenue bill in an odd year. And so if the Republicans have 60 in the House, then they can do anything, as Al indicated.
That's
why, it's the budget.
It's the budget question.
It's the budget,
Right. And we should remind people that there was only a 1 year.
Because it was only a 1 year budget.
State budget passed because of, certainly where we are
Because of
right
things
now.
that are going on in the world.
That's right.
That makes this year a budget year, next year a budget year, and the year after. So
Exactly.
budget is
Well, it
permanent.
seems like it's a budget year every year, in many ways, right? Like it's an election year every year. Okay, so 4 minutes remaining. So any other state legislative races of note before we just kind of put a big bow on it all and just kind of talk about the narrative of primary 2020? Anything else come to mind? Going once, going twice.
Well, again, I think the fall will be very competitive in a bunch of places for the House. The math probably looks like the House stays 60 Republican, roughly. But there are going to be competitive factors in different places. And these races we've talked about where new incumbents have lost, all politics is local, as the expression goes, and those local factors did play into those races. It wasn't just issue things, but it was personality matters and other kinds of questions that people had.
Yeah, and I think especially when
I think we have a considerable potential for surprises in this fall election because we're in a very volatile time. It's a bad economic time. It's a bad time for public safety in terms of the virus. The presidential election seems to be just ginning up a lot of feelings on one side or the other. And it's a time when people are sometimes willing to break out of their normal molds. And in this primary, we have seen a lot of people coming out to vote, primarily for Charles Booker, who don't normally vote. And it will be the job of the Democratic Party to keep those people interested in voting. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch Senator McConnell and how he manages being on the same ticket with Donald Trump, who is increasingly unpopular. Now, I do not think Donald Trump is going to lose Kentucky, but there is some erosion of his support here. And we already see McConnell separating himself from Trump on the issue of wearing masks, for example. I think the Republicans are clearly worried that there's going to be a reversal on the virus that will be very damaging to the country and the economy. And they're in a big argument right now. And McConnell, frankly, is on the right side of that argument, trying to get people to act responsibly.
So a couple things I might add, because I agree with everything that Al and Bob had said about macro trends. We're basically answering the question before you even answered it. You actually asked it. One is just the unpredictability. I mean, think about 6 months ago, two of the biggest factors in America, a pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement and racial justice, were not on the radar screen in January. So well, 5 months from now is a long time, or 4 months, whatever the math is a long time from now. The second thing is, if you're running for office right now and you're a state rep candidate, you can't go door to door. There aren't the parades and the festivals and the places where you go meet people. It was a little bit easier when you're Charles Booker, because you're running for the United States Senate and you can raise money and put it on the air and meet people, and you're getting all this earned media and you have these big rallies. But you're running for state rep, you don't get these kinds of rallies. So how do you run for all these first time and unknown candidates? So we're going to see a lot of these races that on paper today look competitive, but as the race plays out, can they raise the money? Can they build an organization? Will they stay disciplined? I was talking to a first time candidate who says every night she calls people, because that's how she contacts voters.
Yeah.
And most of the times they don't answer, and when they do, they often yell. So how that plays out this fall, and then also, we danced around this a little bit, but just the coattail effect and the organizational impact of having a top-tier United States Senate race in our state, and the organizational dollars and technology and everything else. How does that play out in different parts of the state?
Yeah. Trey Grayson just took your time, but you were his mentor, so you taught him well.
That's all right.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see the demographics. We'll know who these first-time voters are.
Yeah.
They were applauded in Louisville at the fairgrounds at their precinct. That's very heartening. I hope we go after them again for the fall and pull them back out.
Well, we'll be here. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Al, for joining us there in Frankfurt, and thank you all for being here again. Great band, great music. Thanks to you all for watching, and remember, tune in Friday night for Comment on Kentucky with Bill Bryant. Take care.